Welcome to Martha's Stories.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. He didn't shout. That would have been easier. He just stood in the hallway with his coffee and said it flat, like reading a weather report. Then you're just taking up space. I was holding my back brace when he said it, the one I wear when the pain flares after too much standing. I hadn't even put it on yet. I just stood there blinking. He didn't wait for a reply. He turned and walked back into the kitchen like the conversation was done. I used to wipe tears from his chin. Now he wipes me off like a fingerprint on a mirror. The house still smelled like maple syrup. The kids had already run outside. Olivia was yelling something about a worm in the driveway. Jason poured himself another cup and went on about his meeting. He didn't notice I hadn't moved. I wanted to ask, what did I do? But I knew the answer. I got old. I stopped saying yes every time. I told him last week I couldn't watch the kids every single day anymore. My back couldn't take it. Just 2 days a week, I said. Even one if that's better. He nodded then, not mad, not grateful. Just flat. And now this. That sentence echoed louder than any slammed door. Then you're just taking up space. I didn't cry. I didn't break a plate or pack a bag. I made toast. I stood at the counter spreading peanut butter with hands that once made wedding cakes and Halloween costumes. I didn't taste a bite. Just chewed and stared at the fridge. There was a drawing pinned to it. A crayon sun with stick figures underneath. Me labeled Nana. With a big heart over my head. I took it down. Folded it once. Then again. Slipped it into my purse. Jason came back into the kitchen, phone to his ear, keys in hand. He looked right through me. "Love you, babe," he said to someone else, and then he left. He didn't even close the door. I walked over and shut it myself. That's when I heard the house sigh. You know that kind of silence that only comes when you're no longer needed? It doesn't scream. Just lets you go. They don't erase you, I whispered. You just fade. Bit by bit until you realize you've been gone a long time. I stood there in the quiet and said it out loud just to feel it in my bones. I am not background. I am not spare. I am not someone you shelve until you're tired. No one heard it. But that was the point. The week before, I had rearranged the hallway closet just so Olivia could play hide and seek without bumping into the vacuum. Jason never noticed. He said the place looked less cluttered. And I smiled like that was a compliment. That morning I had peeled apples for their lunches, filled snack bags, written Olivia's name in permanent marker on her water bottle, twice because it smudged the first time. I laid out my own clothes for the week. 3 blouses, 2 cardigans, 1 soft pair of shoes. That's all I ever needed. There was a list on the fridge, things I had written down to help, not to be asked. Grocery staples, laundry instructions, who likes crusts and who doesn't. I folded the list that morning, tucked it in my pocket. I don't know why. That same morning I baked banana bread. I had trouble lifting the loaf out of the pan. My wrist caught and my back pinched, sharp enough that I had to pause, lean forward on the counter. Olivia saw me. She asked if I was okay. I smiled and said, "Nana's just a little stiff today." She gave me a sticker. A gold star. Jason walked in during that moment. He looked at his watch. "You'll still be good for next week, right?" he asked. "I might need to adjust. My doctors." He sighed, already pulling his phone out. Right. We'll figure it out." But they didn't. They just hoped I'd keep bending. That afternoon I ordered a knee brace online. With my card. From the emergency savings I never mentioned. Because I knew. I felt it in the way Jason stopped refilling my tea. In the way Emily no longer asked if I was joining them for dinner. In the way the kids said, "Where's Mom?" Even when I stood right in front of them. You go invisible quietly. It's not an event, it's erosion. I remember once when Jason was 9 he fell off his bike. His knee bled, big fat sobs shaking his chest. I knelt down, wiped the gravel off, kissed the edge of the wound. "It's okay," I whispered. "You don't disappear just because you're hurt." But now I know sometimes you do. That evening I packed my own bag. Not all the way. Just enough. A few essentials. I tucked the gold star sticker in the side pocket, beside a roll of Tums and my old address book. Not because I had a plan, but because I'd stopped waiting for someone to remember me. The next morning I found out I wasn't part of the group anymore. It started with a notification on my phone, a calendar reminder that said, Family Brunch Saturday 10 a.m. I didn't remember setting it, but the title felt familiar, like something Emily might have created and shared. I opened the app. The invite showed 7 participants. My name wasn't one of them. I stared at the screen, swiped, refreshed. Nothing changed. Under location, it said the Wren House, private room reserved. I hadn't heard of the place. I copied the name and searched. Upscale. Brunch menu. Floral plates. Private rooms. A picture showed a round table set for 8. I counted. Back in the kitchen I asked casually, "Do you guys have plans Saturday morning?" Jason looked up from his laptop. "Yeah, I think Emily booked something. Just a little thing for the kids, nothing big." She didn't mention it to me. He hesitated just a moment too long. "Oh, right. It's kind of casual. You don't have to worry about it." That pause held everything. He wasn't surprised I asked. He was surprised I knew. "You don't have to worry about it." That's what people say to delivery men who drop off food but aren't invited to stay. I nodded. Of course. I stood there for a while waiting for something else. A softening. A joke. A backtrack. But he was already typing again. That night, I saw a post on Emily's Instagram. The kids trying on outfits. Olivia twirling in a floral dress. Jason in a blazer he hadn't worn since the holidays. The caption read, "Excited for our little celebration Saturday. Finally a moment with just our people." Just our people. I shut the app. They weren't planning around me. They were planning without me. The kindest version of the story was that I'd become optional. The truer version was that I was never really in it. They didn't forget me, I whispered to myself. They excluded me politely. A polite cut still bleeds. I made tea. Not for them. Just for me. Sat on the porch in my housecoat and watched the light go soft over the hedges. A neighbor passed and waved. I waved back. Then I turned my phone off. Not to make a statement. Just because silence suddenly felt safer than hope. I didn't pack much. A cardigan, my medications, 3 pairs of socks. I took the gold star sticker and the old address book. Left the rest. No note. I told them I had a doctor's appointment. That was true. I just didn't say which doctor. Or where. At the station the bench was cold. The kind that hums under your spine when you sit too long. I picked a spot near the window and watched people line up for their destinations. Portland. Eugene. Spokane. No one looked like me. I was the only woman with soft shoes and a cloth tote bag held like a shield across my lap. A girl in headphones asked if the seat next to me was taken. I shook my head. She sat without a word. That kind of silence, side by side, felt better than all the noise I'd left behind. I had enough money in my purse for a one-way ticket, a motel, maybe 2 nights. That's all I needed. Just to be somewhere they weren't. The woman at the counter asked where I was going. I said, "Where's your next bus headed?" She checked. "Bend. Leaves in 20 minutes. "Then I'm going to Bend." I paid in cash. She slid me the ticket like it weighed nothing. But to me it was everything. It was the exact opposite of just taking up space. It was space I chose. I boarded quietly, sat by the window, folded my hands. The seat smelled faintly of dust and disinfectant. Across the aisle a man snored softly. The driver asked if anyone needed help. I shook my head. Nobody noticed the woman who wasn't supposed to leave. Nobody called. Nobody texted. I watched the parking lot blur into trees and then into fields. Somewhere behind me brunch was happening. Or maybe not yet. Maybe they were still getting dressed. Jason probably retied his tie 3 times. Emily smoothed Olivia's hair. And no one said, "Where's Mom?" They didn't need to, because I was never really in the picture. I was the one holding the camera. And today I put it down. I didn't feel brave. I felt quiet. And that quiet was a kind of power. They didn't lock the door, I thought, but they closed their faces. And I left before I forgot the shape of my own. The motel was nothing special. A faded red sign, a vending machine that blinked out of order, and a front desk clerk who barely looked up. I handed over my ID and paid for 2 nights in cash. He gave me a key. An actual key, not a card, and pointed down the hall. Room 12. No questions. Inside, the room smelled of old soap and vacuum lines. There was one bed, one plastic chair, one lamp that buzzed if you left it on too long. But the sheets were clean and the lock worked. I sat on the edge of the bed, pulled out my wallet and took a breath. I needed to check the account. Not my hidden one. The other. The shared account Jason set up 5 years ago. For emergencies. I'd added him as a co-signer when I had pneumonia. Felt harmless then. The password was still my birthday. I logged in. Balance $0. 00. No error. No fraud alert. Just nothing. A clean sweep. 3 withdrawals over 2 months. Neatly spaced. Neatly timed. Not an accident. He didn't ask. He didn't warn. He just took. I stared at the screen until it went dark. Not from shock. Just stillness. That's how they do it, I said aloud. Not with a knife. With quiet hands. I opened my notebook. Crossed out the line I'd written 2 days ago. Keep joint account open for backup. I added a new line underneath. Closed. Like the door. I didn't cry. I just stood up, went to the sink and washed my face. The mirror was chipped at the edge. I looked older in it. Not tired. Just done. I reached into my bag and pulled out the envelope I'd hidden in the lining. My own account. A small one. Opened before Jason's wedding. Never used, never touched. Just in case. There was enough. Enough for rent. For tea. For a new toothbrush. Enough for a version of me that didn't babysit on command or wait for someone to remember she was a person. That night, I sat in the plastic chair and watched the news on mute. A woman was being interviewed. Something about weather or crime or both. I couldn't hear her words, but her face said everything. She was done explaining. Just like me. I woke at 5:20 without an alarm. Habit. The motel room was still. No voices. No footsteps overhead. Just the hum of an old fridge and the smell of leftover cleaning fluid. I sat up slowly, my back stiff from the mattress. But not screaming. Not like it did after a week of babysitting. I made a cup of powdered coffee from the packet near the sink and drank it black. No cream. No spoon. No audience. By 6:10 I was dressed and out the door. I found a copy center 3 blocks down. A neon open sign flickered behind dusty glass. Inside, the clerk barely looked up when I asked to print a few PDFs. I forwarded the email from my old attorney. Years ago, Jason had talked me into naming him as medical proxy. Just paperwork, he'd said. In case something happens. Something had. I printed the revocation form. Signed it with a ballpoint pen that stuttered slightly at the loop in my name. Then I took a photo of it just in case and mailed the hard copy with tracking. No drama. Just business. At 7:40, I walked into the Greyhound ticket office. One way, I said. Eugene. The woman behind the glass asked. Do you want to select your seat? No need. I paid with the card from my own account, the one he never touched, and took the printed ticket. I folded it once and slid it into the side pocket of my purse. Then I did something quiet but irreversible. I powered off my phone. Not airplane mode. Not silence. Off. No pings. No mom. Text 2 days late. No fake concern. No digital leash. They won't hear silence, I thought. They'll hear absence. I stepped outside and stood under the wide sky. No one knew where I was. No one was tracking. For the first time in a decade, I was moving without being watched. I wasn't running. I wasn't hiding. I was selecting myself. As I waited for the bus, I remembered something Olivia said last fall. She had climbed into my lap and whispered, I like when you're quiet, Nana. You feel like a secret. I smiled at the memory, not because it was sweet, but because she was right. I had been their secret, their safety net, their comfort in silence. But now I was gone. The bus pulled into Eugene just after noon. The sky was white with thin light, the kind that makes everything look a little washed but honest. The kind of light that doesn't flatter. It just shows. I stepped off with my tote over one shoulder, purse tight under my arm. There were no taxis. Just a strip of cracked sidewalk and a blinking crosswalk. I found a diner 2 blocks down. It had a crooked sign that said June's and a chalkboard out front with a quote. Sometimes starting over looks like toast and black coffee. Inside, the booth cushions were torn. The waitress was maybe 30, in a pink sweatshirt with a bleach stain across the belly. She handed me a menu and a glass of water. "You just get into town?" she asked. I nodded. "You look like someone who finally left the room," she said, then smiled. "That's a compliment." I didn't answer, but I didn't look away either. I ordered coffee and eggs. She brought it fast, like she knew I wasn't here for ceremony, just warmth. As I ate, a woman at the counter glanced over. She wore hiking boots and a flannel jacket 2 sizes too big. "You're not from here," she said, not accusing, just curious. "I used to be," I replied. "Well," she said, "welcome back. Or forward." That caught me off guard. Not welcome home. Not how long are you visiting. Just forward. I left a $10 tip on a $6 check. Not because I had extra, because someone had named me. At the bus stop, I saw a flyer on a telephone pole. Room for rent. No drama. Quiet preferred. Month to month. A tear-off number at the bottom. I took one. When I called, the voice on the other end was dry and blunt. "Woman, maybe 60. You smoke?" "No." "Have pets?" "No." "Drama?" "Not anymore." A pause. "You can see the place at 4. I wrote down the address in the margin of a receipt. That evening, I stood in front of a duplex with peeling paint and a porch that listed slightly to one side. The woman who opened the door had a cigarette in one hand and a cat wrapped around her leg. "You're the quiet type?" "I am now." She looked at me for a beat too long, then stepped aside. "Come on in. Let's see if you're the kind who stays." I crossed the threshold. It creaked but held. He found me on the 3rd day. I was sitting on the porch, cup of weak coffee in my lap. The cat curled against my ankle. The sky had the color of tin. Still. Soft. Unmoving. I didn't ask how he got the address. Jason stepped out of the rideshare car like he was arriving for a meeting. Same blazer, same posture. But not the same man I raised. That one would have knocked before speaking. "Mom," he said, standing at the foot of the steps. I didn't move. He took one step forward. "We've been calling. Texting. Emily's worried sick." I sipped the coffee. It was too bitter but mine. "You didn't leave a note. You didn't say anything." Another step. "You can't just vanish. That's not fair. You scared the kids." I set the cup down gently. "You left a banana bread on the counter and disappeared. That's not normal, Mom." I looked at him. He had no idea what not normal really looked like. His voice cracked at the edges. Practice concern trying to hold shape. "We didn't mean anything by it. Emily didn't think brunch was a big deal. We figured you needed rest." "You figured I needed silence," I said, voice level. "So I gave it to you." He blinked. I stood. Not in anger. In clarity. I was background. Until I disappeared. He started to speak. I held up a hand. Not fast. Not loud. Just final. "Now you know what silence sounds like." His mouth opened. Then shut. I stepped back inside. Closed the screen door with the quiet click of someone who's no longer responsible for the noise of other people's needs. He didn't knock again. I watched from the window as he lingered by the sidewalk. Hands in pockets. Shoulders drawn in like a boy again. But I wasn't coming back out. He left after 10 minutes. No message. No apology. Just a car pulling away and dust settling. That night, the woman I rented from, her name was Donna, handed me a folded sheet of newspaper. "Senior job board," she said. "In case you get bored." I nodded. Not because I needed a job, but because someone gave me an option without making it a debt. Later, as I turned off the light, I whispered. I didn't leave to teach them anything. I left to remember myself. On Wednesday, a letter arrived in a long white envelope. It was from the bank. Confirmation. The joint account was officially closed. Balance transferred. Access revoked. I held it like a pressed flower. Not fragile. Just finished. That same afternoon, I mailed the change of beneficiary forms to the retirement office. The envelope was thick. Years ago, I had listed Jason as primary. By default. By assumption. By the old math of he's family. Now it said none. Not Clara. Not Olivia. Not anyone. Not yet. I wasn't finished becoming. Later that evening, Donna handed me her cordless phone with a skeptical look. Guy named Jason. Says it's urgent. I took it. Didn't speak right away. He did. Mom, I know you're upset. We messed up. But we can fix this. Just come home. Please. The kids miss you. I listened to his voice. It used to mean safety. Now it sounded like marketing. I'm not lost, I said calmly. You are. Please, he said. We don't even know where you are. You know enough. And I hung up. The next morning, I visited a small legal aid office 2 bus rides away. Donna had circled the name in a church flyer. Good people, she'd said. Don't talk down. The receptionist gave me a clipboard and a soft smile. I waited 20 minutes, then sat with a woman in a navy sweater and strong hands. I want to set up a basic will, I told her. And a living directive. With no family contacts. She didn't flinch. We can do that. I also want my mail forwarded to this address only. I don't want anything sent back east. Understood. I signed. She notarized. I stepped outside into the weak sun and stood still. For the first time in months, the wind felt like mine. That night, I read a message from Emily. It had no greeting. Just, we need to know if you're safe. I didn't reply. Because I wasn't a crisis. I was a decision. They didn't lose me, I whispered. I withdrew. Not from anger. From clarity. They'd searched the old places. My old kitchen, my old phone. The box where I kept my sweaters folded in 3s. But they won't find me there. Because that version of me had already been emptied long before I ever packed a bag. The sun came in low and gold through the kitchen window. It touched the edge of the countertop, the rim of the chipped mug, the folds in the dish towel I'd left to dry overnight. The place was quiet, not heavy. Just whole. I was alone. But I wasn't lonely. I cracked 2 eggs into a bowl. Whisked them with a fork. The rhythm felt familiar. The way my mother used to do it when she still remembered where the salt was. I added a pinch. Stirred and chopped onion. Set the pan to heat. Outside a car passed. Not slow enough to stop. Not fast enough to matter. Donna had left early for work. The cat pawed at the door, then curled up on the rug. I poured myself a glass of water and took a vitamin. Something my old doctor had recommended years ago that I'd always forgotten to buy. Now I remembered. I flipped the eggs, lowered the heat, and slid them onto the plate. Toast popped up. I spread jam raspberry a little sour on 1 slice. I didn't rush. There was no one to feed. No one waiting for me to finish so they could talk about themselves. No, Mom, can you? No, Nana, I need. Just a morning. Just a plate. A window. A woman with her name back. I ate slow. Not to savor. Just to stay present. At 9 o'clock, I opened my notebook. There were names inside. Not family. People I'd met at the senior center, at the library, in line at the bus stop. A woman named Ruth who ran a reading group. A man named Pete who fixed old clocks. I circled too. Wrote down meeting times. I didn't plan to tell my story. I planned to listen. That was the new rhythm. Not fixing. Not serving. Just being. With a little warmth and space and no requirements. As I washed my dish, a memory came. Jason at 8 running through the sprinkler shouting for me to watch. He never looked back to see if I did. He just assumed. I dried my hands and looked out the window. They didn't erase me, I whispered. I walked off the page. And then quieter. Sometimes love means saying nothing back. The cat stretched. The house didn't echo. And I began again. Not as a role. Not as a duty. But as someone who could finally hear herself think. What would you have done in my place? If the story hit you, leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe. It only gets stronger from here.